1174, outskirts of Aleppo, Syria. Ayyubid army had laid a siege on Aleppo. On one night during the siege, Saladin was having a discussion with his emirs inside his tent. Out of nowhere, 3 people rushed into their tent and attacked Saladin. Before anyone could feel the gravity of the situation, one of the attackers stabbed Saladin's neck with a knife. Saladin got soaked in his own blood in a matter of seconds.
This is the story of Saladin from Islamic history perspective.
In 1171, Saladin turned back from the combined Ayyubid and Zenghid campaign against the Crusaders. Once he returned to Cairo, he sent a letter to Nur-ad-Din explaining the possibility of rebellion in Egypt in his absence and pledged to continue sending annual tribute to Nur-ad-Din. No doubt Nur-ad-Din was disappointed with Saladin's decision, but he decided to take no action for the time being. For the next couple of years, Saladin kept sending his army to challenge the rulers of different parts of the Muslim world and brought Yemen, Sudan, Mecca and Medina under his dominion. The increase of Saladin's power created a lot of jealousy in the Zenghid court, and the Zenghid emirs provoked Nur-ad-Din against Saladin. So in 1174, the unthinkable happened. Nur-ad-Din gathered his army to attack the Ayyubids in Egypt. But what happened after is even more shocking, because before the Zenghid army could even start their mission, Nur-ad-Din suddenly fell ill and died. The twist in the tale continued as the Zenghid rule was passed down to Nur-ad-Din's 11-year-old son, As-Saleh. Saladin could easily take advantage of the situation and rebel against the new Zenghid ruler, but Saladin chose the honorable way. Showing respect to his childhood hero, Nur-ad-Din, he pledged his allegiance to As-Saleh. Only after a few days of Nur-ad-Din's death, the Crusaders and their allies Sicilians attacked Egypt again. This time, the target was Alexandria. They brought 1,000 warships, 40 transport ships, and more than 1,000 knights. They attacked the port by surprise and destroyed a lot of Egyptian vessels. But this time, the Muslims were better prepared than 5 years ago. They quickly formed a strong resistance once the surprise was gone. The blockade of Alexandria continued, but the attackers could not capture the city. Saladin started marching to Alexandria with a huge army. The Crusaders were expecting support from the Kingdom of Jerusalem, but the Kingdom of Jerusalem, Amalric, suddenly died. Throne went to his son, Baldwin IV. Baldwin was then only 13 years old and suffering from leprosy. Once Saladin got the news, he used this event to make his battle position stronger. He offered Baldwin a peace treaty, otherwise he threatened to declare war. Baldwin, being new and inexperienced as a ruler, had no other option but to accept it. So no help was sent to the Crusaders attacking Alexandria, and the Crusaders had to move back from Egypt yet again. This time, Saladin won the battle with diplomacy. While Saladin was busy with the Crusaders, the situation in Syria got worse. Since As-Saleh was very young, the ruler of Aleppo, Gamustaqin, took his guardianship and used As-Saleh as a puppet to gain power. He plotted to take over Damascus by killing his governor. When the governor asked for help from other Zenghid emirs, no one came to his aid. Seeing no way, the governor of Damascus asked Saladin for help. Saladin had to make the move fast. He took 700 of his fastest horsemen and rode straight through the enemy territory to reach Damascus. This way, he could reach Damascus before Gamustaqin's army could reach the city. The people of Damascus welcomed Saladin and his men. Now Saladin has a base in Syria. Soon, more soldiers from Egypt arrived to join Saladin. So Saladin marched to Aleppo and demanded Gamustaqin to give up both As-Saleh and Aleppo. As expected, Gamustaqin refused Saladin's demands. So Saladin laid siege on Aleppo. During the siege, the assassins attacked Saladin and injured him, which we saw earlier at the beginning of this video. Fortunately, Saladin's injury was recoverable. Saladin's guard could capture all the assassins before they could do any further damage. Before we proceed, let's explore who these assassins really were. The assassins were a secret group in Syria who was famous for the targeted assassinations of Muslims as well as the political leaders of Crusaders. They were from the Shia sect and were angry with Saladin for abolishing the Fatimid Caliphate. So Gamurstikin could easily plot with them to attack Saladin. Now, back to our main story. After the attack, Saladin realized that there is a connection between Gamurstikin and the assassins. At the same time, news came to Saladin that Gamurstikin had also plotted with Raymond of Tripoli, and Reynaud was plotting to attack Saladin's territories in Syria. If this plan becomes successful, then Saladin and his army would be cut off from the rest of the Ayyubid region. So there was no way out for Saladin except to lift the siege and move back to Damascus to protect his territory. Still, Saladin's rise in Syria did not go well with other Zenghid emirs. Nuruddin's cousin and ruler of Mosul, Saifuddin, made an alliance with Gamurstikin, and together they persuaded other Zenghid emirs to join them against Saladin. They brought a humongous army to fight Saladin. Saladin called for more soldiers from Egypt and prepared his troops in Syria to meet the enemy at a place called Horns of Hama. The Zenghids had more soldiers than the Ayyubids, so Saladin placed his army in such a way using the geographical feature of the area that the Zenghids would not have any advantage because of their greater numbers. The Ayyubid army was placed on higher land along a river. On the other side, there were hills, so the whole Zenghid army could not attack the Ayyubids at once. When the battle started, the Zenghids led the charge. The Ayyubids were under huge pressure, but they resisted from breaking the line. Saladin sent his reserve troops to support his front line. After a while, the Ayyubids started to push back. Saladin was actually waiting for his reinforcements from Egypt, and fortunately, they arrived right in middle of the battle. Now the Zenghids were trapped. Saladin's two armies could easily overpower the Zenghids, and the Zenghids surrendered and offered a truce. After negotiations, the Zenghids agreed to leave out Saladin's territories in Syria and promised to help the Ayyubids against the Crusaders in the future. Saladin would be the ruler of Damascus and its surroundings and would be independent of Zenghid command. But Aleppo would stay in Zenghid hands, and As-Saleh would be the ruler of Aleppo under Saifuddin's guardianship. This was a brilliant deal for Saladin. He now had two fronts against the Crusaders, and he also became officially free of his earlier allegiance to the Zenghid ruler. The Caliph in Baghdad proclaimed Saladin as the Sultan of Egypt and Syria. The Ayyubid dynasty became a dominant force in Levant. This episode on Saladin's right to power in Syria ends here. Join us next time as you explore Saladin's first ever large-scale military expedition against the Crusaders, which unfortunately ended in a humiliating defeat in Montgazard.